Okay, so trusting the Lord did not come easy to me. It was a hard battle to trust the Lord. I had to learn it the hard way when I left my place of comfort to another place, a strange land where I've never been before. I was asked to go there and, serve my fatherland for my 1 year mandatory service. And I realized something in the process, that God doesn't want to share your trust with somebody else. Well, I realized it the hard way. So in this video, I will be sharing with you how I learned to trust the Lord the hard way. Okay, so welcome. This is Moments with Ukamaka Richard, and I want to say thank you to every one person who have subscribed to my channel. Thank you for your comment. I see them, they are really encouraging, and I appreciate you. If you are new here, what are you waiting for? Click on the subscribe button and get notifications each time I post a video. So today I will be sharing this, and I want to believe that it's going to help somebody. Now, when I was doing this video, when I was getting set to do this video, I prayed. I said, the Lord, whoever is going to come across this video is going to learn how to trust you and trust you and trust only you. So don't forget, I get to share my experiences as a young lady walking with the Lord, both my past and my present. Like I say, there is no past without the present, and that's why I get to share my past so I can make sense of today. So I'm sharing how I learned how to trust the Lord. Like I said, it was a difficult one for me to trust the Lord because I grew up in a family where I grew up in a Christian home, but I trusted my mom so much, more than I trusted God, until my mother died. And I said to myself, why would this woman die? So if she died, that means she doesn't have the power to do everything she promised to do. It was funny at the time. That's a story for another day, right? So trusting the Lord, when I was in the university, where I had an issue trusting the Lord was when it comes to provisions, providing, and then when it comes to trusting what the Word of God says. So when I was in the university, when my mother died, I prayed. At that time I prayed. So God provided people that will train me and my elder sister in school. And something happened. At some point, I began to see those people as my source instead of channels. And I began to trust them more than I trusted God. God is the source, men are channels. So God can decide to close off the channel just so you can trust him. So I trusted those people throughout my university days, and it became a problem for me. It became a problem for me to pray and trust God to answer my prayers because I was always having a second option outside God. So after my university days in 2017, that was when the reality set in. Every one person that was with me throughout my university days who was helping me, they all abandoned me. I would call them and they would not pick my calls. I would send messages, they would not respond. At some point, I had to start binding and casting. I thought it was a devil trying to put a clog in the wheel of my success. It was really fun. These things that we do, we pray. And then I failed to realize that it was God teaching me to trust him. Because when I found God again, I told God I was going to serve him. So sometimes we make prayers, we don't know that God will go ensure we go through the entire process to become what he wants us to become. So these people stopped picking my calls. I was really frustrated because I had put my trust in them. So fast forward to when I was sent to somewhere where I am currently living. It was a place I didn't know. I didn't know whether I hadn't been there before. So I was sent here. I was all alone. And one thing I made up my mind to do, I made up my mind that immediately I leave my father's house to go to school, that I was never coming back to the house. I didn't make that prayer, or I didn't make that commitment or resolve out of my trust in God. No, I just said those words because I wanted to be independent. I told myself I was going to make money so I can start taking care of my family. That was the mindset. The mindset wasn't that I was going to trust God to be on my own. No. So Fast forward to when I came to Calabar, Cross River State, Nigeria for my NYSC. By God's special grace, I got somewhere to stay. And before I got that place to stay, I had to make a lot of calls, which was an indication that I haven't learned how to trust God. So when I made those calls, I said, Lord, please, please. I bribed God actually. Also, I told God, if you give me a house and I'm going to win souls for you. That's a story for another day. So when I eventually settled in Calabar, it became a worst case scenario because all the doors that were open were shut. Everybody that I knew, they stopped communicating to me, and I felt that I did something wrong. So while I was in Calabar, I was earning 19,500 naira, which was nothing to take care of me, to food my needs. And not just that I was earning that money, I would pay my tithe. A point came when all of these things were making sense to me, and God was beginning to tell me, you cannot say that you are mine and then you don't trust me. You can't say that I am your Abba and then you don't trust me. So I had to put God on a trial. So I was being paid 19,500 naira, and that was the only money I was earning. Nobody was sending me anything. The only one time that my uncle sent me something was after a long while of trusting God. So what I did, I would divide my allowance, I would pay my tithe, and then I would sow seed, because the reason I started sowing seed was I wanted to put God on trial. I was telling God, so I can trust you to provide for me. I'm going to be sowing this seeds to you to see what you will do for me. For me then, it was more like a transaction. And when I sold those seeds, I was too impatient to allow my seeds to germinate. The next day I'm telling God, Lord, I have sown my seed, oh, come and provide for me, and all of that. But all the while, I just felt that God was just looking at me and saying, this year, you still have a long way to go. So for one good year, it was me and God. At some point, my younger sister came to stay with me. So I was earning 19,500 naira, which was not even enough for me, and I was taking care of my sister. I tell you the truth and I do not lie. I had to trust God to the point where I sold this money several times. I made pledges and I sold them. And it got to a point where I couldn't afford to buy anything for myself because there was no money. Nobody was helping. Nobody was helping. That was God's way of telling me, you cannot trust me and trust somebody else. It has to be me or nobody else. So for one good year, I didn't buy clothes for myself. I didn't make my hair. I was on low cut because I couldn't afford. I couldn't afford it. And all this while, I was trusting God. I was telling God, Lord, you cannot fail me. You said you will provide for me. So why am I going through this whole issue? I was thinking that once I started trusting God, the miracles would start, popping up every day. It was in that process I realized that trusting God was part of the journey. I realized that when you sow seeds, you have to allow your seeds germinate. At some point in the period of trusting God, I will get frustrated and I will nag God, I will nag Him. At some point, I even threatened God. But while all this was happening, something was building up in my spirit. At some point, I told myself, Lord, if you cannot provide, then nobody else will do that for me. If you cannot be my source, then nobody else will. I remember one day when this whole revelation dawned on me that men are channels, God is the source. That God can decide to close off a channel because He's the source and open up another one. So the process of trusting God tarried for me until the point where I gave in to God. I told God, I trust you. I don't care whether you provide for me or not, but I will trust you. Then I was not even looking like this. I was looking like a shadow of myself. And then I used to ask God, is this how people who trust you, is it how they look like? I used to question God a lot then. Is this how they look like, people that trust you? They look like a shadow of themselves? But in those times, God was just building something in my inner man. until something happened. God started opening new doors for me. The doors that I felt the help was going to come from, it got closed. Then God opened other doors for me. God sent help from other places. And that was where it all made sense to me. That the more you trust God, the more He reveals to you that He is your source. Scriptures like, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack," began to make sense to me. Scriptures like, "I will supply all your needs." God will supply all your needs. Scriptures like, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding." Scriptures like, "Do not be anxious for anything." They all began to make sense to me because previously I had read them, but they were not making sense. And something happened. When I finished my NYSC, it was another phase of trusting God. I'm going to share that story in the next video, how God asked me to stay back in an unknown land when I had no job, my rent had expired, my sister was staying with me, and there was nothing to eat. But God says, stay back and trust me. I'll tell you something, God has been faithful. I have seen some of the seeds that I sowed back then germinate. But I got to learn that you cannot trust God and trust another person. And God doesn't even want to share your trust with some other person. That the process of trusting God has to be gradual. And you have to put your heart in it. I'm going to stop here. And I want to believe that the words that I have said, this story I have shared, will minister to someone who's having a hard time trusting the Lord. That trusting the Lord is always a gain and not a loss. Thank you once again for taking time to watch this video, and I hope it impacts and ministers to you. Please don't forget to subscribe if you're new here, and also don't forget to drop your comment, like, and share this video to someone you love. This is Moments with Ukamaka Richard. I'll see you on the next video, and I promise you the next video is going to be more interesting. Bye for now.